tune in is potentially just listen to a little Hamilton music and even sing along a little. I'm not claiming to be perfect, but I'll do this for approximately 1 minute duration. It's the Hamilton History Has Its Eyes on You song. Let me tell you when you are now. When I was given my first command, I led my men straight into a massacre. Actually, I can't sing that song. But 4 people are watching, so we might as well. It's 5. Start the show. Welcome. This is my International Women's Day broadcast. I've already been part of a group broadcast, but I'd just like to go through a few political things that are currently happening at the moment. I like to keep my viewers up to date with my understanding and their shared understanding, because I think that helps us generate political consensus. It helps us build a moral majority, as it were, that's not just one devoted to maintaining the social fabric by trying to cancel gay marriage or trying to cancel trans athlete participation, but actually wants to support and shore up the pillars of democracy and so have more prosperous, safer lives for everybody. Because where democracy is more secure around the world, people have more opportunity, and there's documented correlations with better outcomes for the citizens of countries where democracy flourishes. So that's my International Women's Day bugbear, is to not let anti-women backlash contribute to support for modern-day fascist political parties that run on optics and the emotional validation of people's kind of nostalgia for what they perceive as greatness in terms of dynamics of men's superiority over women, but also their backlash, their resistance to change. Some change is okay. It's always a challenge for every society to mitigate to balance out the benefits of change against the risks of destabilization. So I acknowledge that destabilization is a thing, and that in French society, when the French Revolution changed the monarchy's rule over that particular nation, there was a period of intense bloodshed and a lot of cycling through different leaders as leadership after wave of leadership was executed. So here, the first thing I would like to share today is that a conservative political group called Heritage Action for America, which is a non-conservative nonprofit tied to the right-leaning think tank, the Heritage Foundation. They're investing $10 million on tightening election security, which is a euphemism for voter suppression, to try and make it more difficult for people to vote. And where that happens, all minority groups become or have their freedom and their opportunities imperiled. Because the people who like to make it difficult to vote are groups who don't enjoy the erosion of their particular privileges and power and enhanced status. So let's see, what have we got so far? We've got someone saying, John saying hi, 1013 saying Happy Women's Day, ladies. Someone called Sylvia is here saying all the ladies. And John is saying, you like the cancel culture take on minority gender positions. Why, thank you. So the next point, and I just do raise that because I think it's so critical for us to pay attention to and talk about what's happening so that it doesn't fly under the radar. And I know the mainstream media has their own agenda, but to a degree, what we talk about influences where the mainstream media go, because they also run stories to try and capture our pre-existing interests and attention. So when we talk about something more, we're just contributing to a pool of interest that creates a zeitgeist that may ultimately influence media barons who will then allow the topic to become more talked about. And that's been the case with climate change, apparently. a critical factor in terms of people's support for political parties who profess a need to take action on the climate change front. The critical factor is how much they've talked about it with their friends. So if you've heard about it from a person in real life, that is likely to be a fundamental factor in why you take the problem seriously, which means every conversation we have about climate change is contributing to the number of voters who then prioritize that issue as key for ensuring the safety and security of humanity going forwards. It undermines Americans' national interest to disregard climate change and to allow billions of dollars in public subsidy still to prop up failing and damaging industries such as coal and gas and fossil fuel and fracking, etc. Wow, I can see that Major Biden is trending because the Bidens' 2 dogs have been sent back to their family home in Delaware for apparently having some adjustment issues to life in the White House. They're big German shepherds, so I'm guessing that will be Fox News's major story for the week if they get tired of manufacturing outrage about Dr. Seuss and how the fact that the publishing house that publishes Dr. Seuss books themselves decided to not proceed with republishing 6 particular books, none of which are the most famous or popular books. So reading Green Eggs and Ham, manufactured outrage because nobody was even suggesting Green Eggs and Ham had any inappropriately racist content. It's just Republicans are the guardians of saving everybody from criticism who's on their team, or not even who's on their team. Dr. Seuss wasn't on the team of conservatives. He was very out there prior to World War II. He drew a lot of comics of people reading children's stories. It says, "But don't worry, children, the big bad Adolf Wolf only ate foreign children," i.e. it's a false reassurance to say America shouldn't become involved in World War II because Adolf Hitler is only involved in massacring European Jews. It's something that America should take seriously as a threat to our collective humanity. Whose heritage is the Heritage Foundation promoting, asks John. And I think you know, but it's still a good rhetorical question. It's white heritage. It does behoove us to take great notice of what is happening to the planet, and there are certain areas which suffer more, but there is also a diffuse risk in general of increased extreme weather events that can strike anywhere. Texas didn't expect to have these additionally cold conditions, although they had them also in 2011. Weather's very variable, but that doesn't excuse the fact that anthropogenic conditions, i.e. humans and our industrialized activities of making things and creating plastic by things that we extract from the ground and then heating them so that they become all of these very useful plastic products, but have this byproduct of gas produced that goes into the atmosphere and contributes to forming a heat trapping layer around the Earth that causes some of the reflected heat from the sun. So that energy and warmth from the sun strikes the Earth, warms it up, gets reflected back off into the atmosphere, and less of that escaped heat can occur because of all of the carbon dioxide that we have put into the atmosphere, all of the gigatons of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases such as methane. And so we definitely do need to do something about that, and we need to help overcome our own collective normalcy bias, which means people often make decisions in favor of ignoring problems until they become almost impossible to deal with because they're so in your face. So we're just trying to initiate the best of humanity, our ability to actually look ahead and preempt problems and deal with them before it spirals into a situation where humanity is doomed. We have imaginations, we have foresight, we have qualities that we can use, but those qualities have been cancelled by conservative culture of irrational support for the profit margins of fossil fuel profiteers. Bernie says, good day. That's lovely. Molly says the pups may have been overstimulated by so many people being round. Yes, hi Molly. I saw all your comments before when I was in the group chat. It was just hard to claim my time and respond to you in that way, because obviously there were a lot of us contributing to that group International Women's Day broadcast. But I saw you and I valued all your comments. And at one point I realized as well that my microphone was not active until Rev gave me a tip of refreshing my browser. It was my own fault. I'd accidentally knocked over my microphone at one point, plugged it back in, didn't realize that the microphone hadn't hooked up again. And I was just thinking, oh, nobody really cares what I have to say, until I realized people couldn't hear anything that I was attempting to say. Molly points out that in Pennsylvania, they've been warned that there may be flash flooding this summer. So this is very illustrative of the point I want to make, that everybody potentially can suffer from weather events becoming more extreme and more widespread, because a heated Earth has more evaporated water in it. It has moister air. It has conditions that are more conducive to more torrential rain, more extreme droughts. And by talking about it, by deeming ourselves worthy to talk about it, that we don't have to be experts, we don't have to completely understand the scientific mechanisms of it, we can just understand a little and share that understanding. We can't leave all of the confidence to the bad guys in this current historical moment. And the bad guys are the neo-Nazis, who are in a coalition of convenience of defending white culture, which they deem to be modern industrialization, pretending there's no downsides to it, that anybody who says there's a problem with climate and heating of the world is lying, or if they are right, well, then it's not humans' fault. Or if it is humans' fault, there's nothing that we can do about it, and we might as well eat, drink, and be merry and keep burning fossil fuel gases and sabotaging or underfunding renewable energy industries. Yeah, I know. Helen's making the point that nobody didn't think what I was saying. That was the stupid, irrational illusion I was laboring under when my microphone was off for probably about 20 minutes after I knocked it over. And I was just like, oh, nobody's responding to anything I'm saying, until I realized the problem lay at my end with my microphone. So I was grateful for Rev for pointing out that refreshing my browser might fix that problem. And then it was so lovely to have a voice again and to connect with you and Kaylee. So yeah, don't worry, Helen. I didn't retain that belief. It got fixed. I got quiet after a few times of saying anything and not getting a response. I was like, oh yeah, I guess, other people's turn to talk. But then we fixed it. I'm really glad you're here and lovely to see you. Losing your mic is like being on mute in a Zoom meeting. Yes. Eleanor was feeling the same way too. Yeah, I mean, to a degree, it's a function of being in a group chat, isn't it? Like, you have to make space for other people. I'm very extroverted, I know that. And I often feel very passionate about getting certain points across. So I also thought, well, it could just be a good sign for me to step back. But then ultimately I was happy to realize my microphone was off and I could fix that. Whereas Eleanor, I guess, if you weren't having microphone problems, then we just need to make more space for you to speak. Arizona is on fire watch, points out Rosado, with a wildfire. So, yeah. Helen, you don't have to be sorry. That's one of those situations where we go, that's a funny one of somebody losing their microphone and not knowing and just going, oh, okay. Kim really enjoyed the roundtable, which is awesome. Thanks, Kim. I enjoyed your commentary as well. There was one comment you made we didn't get to, where you said when you worked in archaeology, that everybody was more potentially woke or modern in their points of view, and so more inclusive of you as a woman, and that later on in a different field that was more technically oriented, was it mechanics? But there you had to continually defend your competency because you were a woman, and that was more abrasive to people's expectations. Bernie's in Melbourne. Republicans are envious of the color green. Okay, I think I'm up to date with the comments. And Helen wants Eleanor to be included more with the HAPS team. I probably have some room to try and ingratiate myself with the HAPS team too. I'm new to this platform. Even though I signed up a while ago, I was still clinging to Periscope because I use a website called StreamYard that lets me broadcast to Periscope, but also share a screen with Twitter. And I think Rev might have maybe Helen does as well, have the technical know-how to introduce video from another website, so to just bring Twitter on board. But in the meantime, I'll just keep describing what I see on my Twitter bookmarks feed, which is where I save everything that I want to talk about. I would have shared, for example, some footage at the moment that I saw recently this morning of an Uber driver who picked up 3 women, asked one to wear a mask, and then they yelled racial slurs at him, and one grabbed his phone and another one coughed in his face. So it's apparently being investigated, but I was happy to share it, because I think people need to be aware of and shamed of the risks to your freedom if you behave in that way, which is illegal. It's illegal to cough in somebody's face now. There's legal precedent that's been established that is a form of assault in the context of a pandemic to cough in someone's face. I was wanting to highlight that women's potential to act villainously or act aggressively, in a way, it's a strength to claim that, because it's harder to see, but women are often persecuted in a way by positive stereotypes about women, that if we're seen as the guardians of all that is good, then first of all, we cut off half the population from feeling like they ought to be involved in upholding moral standards. If men think it's women's job to care about being nice or ethical, and men's job to just pursue self-interest full speed ahead, then that is a dysfunctional division of labor roles, and we can work to end that, even by pointing out that women are perfectly capable of behaving badly and villainously, and that we shouldn't limit ourselves by designating one gender as the guardian of goodness. John is still watching on Periscope. Yes, I am multicasting right now from HAPS to Periscope. I'm just not using the same software that I'm familiar with that lets me share a screen, but I suspect that HAPS has that functionality. Kim worked in auto damage, and that was challenging to not only to people's expectations, but possibly also to egos, if you knew a lot about cars. Yes, and people will go in to fight hard for their worldviews to be sustained and upheld, and to try and exclude or sabotage anybody who proves them wrong about that. So if your existence as a female auto mechanic challenges the preconceptions of someone, be it a man or a woman, then they will say, well, you're not really good, or you're doing a bad job, potentially. And you have to work harder to stop them from sabotaging your work output, I would imagine. Oh, Helen is offering, this is awesome, if you need me to talk you through the desktop, it's not a problem. There are also YouTube tutorials if you're happy to look those up. Being the extrovert and socially minded person that I am, I probably would prefer to be walked through by you, Helen, whenever you have some time that you would be interested in doing that, and I would be super grateful. All right, now let's see. What else are we talking about? Oh, Ben Shapiro was trending in some small part because he was rude about America's royalty, Meghan Markle, Queen Meghan Markle, I will call her. And he also pointed out that there has been a reported surge in unaccompanied migrant children arriving at the border, which means some of those detention facilities that have been constructed in the Obama-Biden era and the Trump era, and now in the new Biden administration, some of those detention facilities are potentially full to capacity with unaccompanied children. And Ben Shapiro uses that catchphrase of, oh, so kids in cages, eh? One could almost say. And all the time, people will have heard me campaign against the left using that phrase, kids in cages, because it's inadequate. It's inaccurate to attribute kids in cages to Trump because the Obama-Biden administrations created detention facilities to help house children who were turning up at the border without any accompanying adults in order to claim asylum in the United States. And they couldn't just be released on the street to just wander around the United States without adult supervision. Once arriving in America, they had their claims processed and were potentially hooked up with sponsor families. But so some of the old chainmail, the chain link walls and what was deemed to be cages, they weren't an initiative of the Trump administration, and it was always a concept, a misunderstanding with the potential to massively backfire. Not even the potential, they're always massively backfired. The key descriptive term to use about the children that the Trump administration abused was to say the forcibly kidnapped children or the forcibly separated children, children who were too young to have migrated to the border by themselves, but who came with parents. Or even if they were older children, just if they came with their families and had every expectation of remaining with their parents or caregivers whilst in the US, and yet they were forcibly separated, as if this administration was Hitler, sending children crying away from their parents, parents in detention centers who are still there as a family unit. It was reported that some of them slept with their legs wrapped around their children in order to protectively exclude a circumstance of a security guard or an American guard coming to take their child away in the night while they were asleep. Because there was lots of subterfuge practiced against those parents and children. Some parents were told that we are taking your children away for a bath, and then the children didn't come back. And the parents would say, it's been quite a long time. When is my child coming back? And they would tell them, your child is not coming back. And there was a level of callousness and anti-migrant bigotry that was fueling the cruelty and destructiveness of those actions, not only in the Trump administration, but at the trickle-down bigot level of the officials acting on America's behalf that were just really psychologically devastating those children, particularly those too young to even understand what was happening, particularly those whose records were also purposefully lost or misplaced so to make reunion more difficult. And under the Biden administration, over 100 children have been reunited now with their families that have been found. And the Biden administration is trying to facilitate, apparently, those families having the option to resettle now in the United States, potentially as a compensatory measure for the suffering they underwent with the months of forced separation, the months of stress, anguish, and anxiety that would have caused. Imagine having a baby who was breastfeeding and having that baby taken away from you, and just the absolute ripping apart of your brain and your heart that would inflict on you. Oh, Kim just gave me a Supporting Women Award. Thanks, Kim. That's very sweet. Molly's HAPS was not working today, but you deleted and reinstalled it. Okay. Would you like to join my broadcast, Molly? I mean, I can see that my video screen is a little intermittent there. Oh, I forgot that with HAPS, I have to make sure I close absolutely everything else in my browser window. Let me just close some things. That will be useful. Oh, I don't want to close this just yet. There's a New York Times story I wanted to share a little bit, featuring a story about a Black Lives Matter organizer called Bridget Craighead. She was dancing the electric slide with 3 police officers in the grass next to the farmer's market. It was the first Black Lives Matter protest that this rural Virginia county had ever had. Ms. Craighead, a 29-year-old hairdresser, had organized it. She had not known what to expect, but when the officers arrived, they were friendly. They held her signs high and stood next to her, smiling. Later, an officer brought pizzas and McDonald's Happy Meals. They even politely ignored her cousin's expired license plate. This, she thought, was the best of America. Police officers and Black Lives Matter activists laughing and dancing together. They were proving that, in some small way, their southern county, with its painful past, was changing. They had gotten beyond the racist ways of older people. This made her feel proud. In a photograph from that day, Sergeant Thomas Robertson is smiling, and Miss Craighead is standing behind him, her face tilted towards the sun and her fist held high. She did not see the officers around Rocky Mount much after that, but in early January, someone sent her a photograph. It showed Officer Jacob Fracker and Sergeant Robertson posing inside the Capitol on January the 6th, the day the building was stormed by Donald Trump's most fervent supporters. At first, she did not believe it, not her officers. But there they were, Officer Fracker giving the camera his middle finger. She confronted them on Facebook, and they did not deny it. On the contrary, they were proud. So I can't show you. Hang on, is there any way I can click on this to share the screen with you? Nope, don't want to do that. All right, well, I'll just keep describing it. Hi, Brian. You follow me on Periscope, Brian, so you had to continue following her. Oh, you mean you signed up to follow me at HAPS, which I think is good because all my Periscope followers should know that, because you're going to have to follow me on HAPS because the last day of Periscope is, I believe, the 31st of March. So if you want to keep seeing my broadcast, then this is the medium that I'll be using. HAPS doesn't break up for you when you wear Wi-Fi headphones. Okay, Dav, if you invite me up as a director, you can help me out. That would be awesome. All right, so invite people. All right. There we go. And then how do I click do it? Did that invite you, Eleanor? I might try it again one more time just to see if it worked. Oh, yep, I think you're there. Invited, possibly. Yes, Eleanor's there. Woohoo! I've got a director now. That's so exciting. So if I send the link to you, Eleanor, of the New York Times article, because I would really love to show people these photographs. I think it's historic.
Yeah.
See the contrast between
or if
these.
you can even put it down in your comments. I can
that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So it might take a second to load, but it'll turn up there. Okay. So that's good too, because then everybody can see the New York Times article for themselves if they want to use up their one free article a month reading that one. But the contrast, these officers holding up these signs that says Black Lives Matter. I think they're holding up a sign as well that says silence is violence. So it turns out they didn't write those signs themselves. They were helping the organizer by holding up her signs. But for them to be able to do that and then also participate in essentially a white nationalist coup effort to overthrow the Capitol and so overthrow the results of an election.
I have to
do this. What did you say, Ellen?
Oh, I'm going to have to do this incognito to pull up the article. I'm wondering if Hacks will let me share an incognito tab. We'll find out. I've never done.
Otherwise, what I can do is just use a screenshot of it, post it to Twitter, and then we'd have a Twitter link that we could visit as well, because that's something going forward I might want to do. Frank Lentz has an unusual question that says, after perusing the whys, etc., where are we right now globally? That's an odd question, Frank, and I should still welcome it, shouldn't I? Because questions are engagement and engagement is good. So I'll just be very honest, Frank, I don't understand your question, but thank you for asking it. I'll go back to this International Women's Day thing, though, which is what I want to say. If women can have our position strengthened, it's worth noting that when we are all more free, we're all lifted. So a small story from Australia I'd like to share is that a former school runaway became a school principal and used an Indigenous curriculum at the school she was in charge of. And that introduction of an Indigenous curriculum has seen enrollments double at the primary school she's the principal of. So what do Americans call primary school? Is that called not infant school?
Elementary?
Elementary school, exactly. Thank you, Eleanor. So elementary school has had enrollments double because this principal understood from her own experience that she didn't feel that the students or the teachers recognized her Aboriginality. And so by being more explicit in terms of including an Indigenous curriculum, there is much more enrollment. So for all the academics or the researchers who just tabulate what they observe and go, okay, yes, there's problems with school enrollment, this woman actually has a solution with a documented doubling of intake of students, because guess what? It attracts people when you validate their background and their existence. And Aboriginality has a long history in Australia of being disdained, there being contempt that's expressed subtly or overtly. Now, sometimes we only look at racism as being overtly hostile, aggressive, or violent activity, like burning crosses or acting violently towards someone. But modern society, or at least young people, are much better at talking about microaggressions, ways in which you can just subtly put people down and erode their sense of self and their core being. And humans really do require a solid sense of self in order to function at maximal level in our society, in our world. You need a sense of self to be able to push through this world with purpose and with conviction and with a positive drive. You have to have some positive beliefs about yourself and the world in which you exist. CosmicRose said, someone please help Dav see comments from YouTube. I can see them, darling. Sorry, I didn't reply to the one about hitting the like button just because I didn't think that comment was directed towards me so much as the audience. Oh, look, Kim is saying, thanks for the award, Molly. Yes. Yes, thank you. I am grateful for and endorse all support because that validates me as a modern day independent media person. Brett says, hello from Los Angeles. Hello, Brett. How are you today? So it feels as if for International Women's Day, I've tangentially diverted a lot into talks about racism and minority issues. But that story about an Australian school principal doubling the enrolment numbers for elementary school has big resonance for me in how women can help lift up each other by being more overt with our own curriculum as well. So we have to be intentional about what our agenda is sometimes and look at it carefully to make sure it's functional as well and not just vengeful or too narrow, because there's a lot of things that we can do to improve society and the lot of women by pointing out that we support men being invited to be custodians of goodness. That's relating to my earlier point that women, it might not be an intuitive point of feminism, that women can be oppressed sometimes by being deemed to be the custodians of goodness, so that when women do commit serious crimes such as murder, they're given 2 to 3 times the jail sentences, the average jail sentence of a man who commits a serious crime such as murder, just because it's seen as unnatural. And therefore the naturalistic fallacies come into play, and people think, or people in the justice system think, yes, this woman must be made an example of because she hasn't been a proper woman, she hasn't acted in a good, nice, nurturing way, so we get to scapegoat her to the extent that she can get a 15-year jail sentence. For this offense, we might give a man 6 years for, but, an example must be made because it's so unnatural that a woman has committed this crime. So even women who've committed self-defense crimes of murdering someone who was attacking them, and again, it's still seen as this unnatural response. Women have to be able to get comfortable with the idea that we can defend ourselves and we can attack people who are attacking us. But that extends to championing even unlovable people in the criminal system who are getting disproportionately long sentences because that's not fair. And so sometimes when we suffer from a world where there's so much information and it can be hard to embrace more causes, it's like, nope, we have to make space to care about unlovable people who are still being mistreated, because passively allowing that type of mistreatment trickles down into negative consequences for the rest of us in other ways. Frank is saying sorry for his really broad question about where are we globally? Where are we? So he's apologized for the open question. Never mind, was just seeking your thoughts generally, disregard. Well, thanks, Frank. I will disregard that. But it's good to think of for shaping questions for next time, because the word regard could be useful there. You could say, where are we globally with regards to? With regards to fascism, with regards to democracy, with regards to environmental policy, with regards to the standing of women. So lots of different directions there that you could make that a conversation like that a little more engaging going forwards. Brian's here. Hi, Brian. Nice to see you. I don't know if I'm doing it on purpose, but when I said hi, Brian, I could hear this Monty Python speech impediment happening, in which the life of Brian has scenes where a Roman leader in the movie has a lisp and always says, hello, Brian. So I apologize if that seeps into my voice. We've got Kim, Craig. Hello, Craig, Kimchi. Lots of people I recognize. CosmicRose, as well as Molly. So thank you, everybody, for joining in. And let's move on to the next point that I'm going to make, which is that Donald Trump has just sent out a statement telling Republicans to donate to him and not to the Republican Party. So that's potentially a lucrative new revenue stream for Trump, who was probably enjoying raking in the millions of dollars that people donated to his legal costs for trying to overturn the results of the presidential election last year. What was the total? I think it was as high as $150 million that was donated to Trump. But I should be able to find that statement. But in the interim, I'll also point out that being president was very lucrative for Trump's grifting strategies. Apparently, or it is rumored, I will say, that he accepted draft tweets for a fee. So you type out a draft tweet, he might modify it, you pay him $1 million, and then Trump posts the tweet. So you can say, hi, I need support for my Hindu nationalism group, and pay him $1 million, and he'll say, Hindu nationalists are absolutely on the right side of history, and it's such a shame that people are opposing them. Do you know what I mean? It's just illustrative, even in rumor stage, of a pattern of grift that we know to be true more generally, that it's been established that Trump charged hundreds of dollars a night for Secret Service agents to stay in a cottage on his golf properties, and then that they just hired that cottage year round because Trump spent so much time on his own golfing properties that it was deemed to be a worthwhile expenditure to just have that cottage permanently hired at taxpayers' expense. Brian has got to figure out how to use this program. You can't watch me on Periscope because it's too laggy for you. Are you watching me on HAPS at the moment, or are you watching me, Brian, on Periscope and it's lagging? Yes, Ron is making a good point that it's been reported that Trump gathered a lot of money ostensibly for his legal expenses, but he didn't actually expend that money. So he didn't pay Rudy Giuliani, say, his $40,000 a day fee, etc. He kept the money, which is also fairly strongly in keeping with what we know of Trump. He keeps the money. He grifts the money. He keeps the money. And I think it's something Americans are going to be grappling with over the next few years. The dawning of the realization from more and more people that Republicans, led by Trump, purposefully sabotaged America's ability to respond to COVID, that America didn't have a functional federal government during this time of crisis, and that, in fact, they were pedaling backwards as fast as they could to make sure there was no national testing strategy, that testing itself didn't get off the ground as much as it needed to, and that the responsibility for the pandemic was palmed off to governors in the hope that they would mess it up, and that the virus would be disproportionately affecting states governed by Democratic governors, and that would then feed into the tribalism in America and the hyper-functionality of tribalistic conservative media machines that would facilitate people just blaming Democratic governors. And look at what's happening with Andrew Cuomo. They're extrapolating from people's concerns that his staff helped hide the numbers of nursing home deaths into now taking statements from anybody who says, yes, I was sexually harassed. Governor Cuomo kissed my hand 20 years ago or 2 years ago. Accusations which wouldn't normally add up to that much in public perception of wrongdoing. Kissing somebody's hand or hugging them is sometimes attributable to being Italian. But in Governor Cuomo's case, he is vulnerable because people have looked at the high death rates that was a consequence from being hit, the first state to be hit in the United States when there was this pandemic, but people didn't know much about it other than Trump, whose dated interviews with Bob Woodward indicate that he was aware as early as February the 7th that COVID-19 was airborne and highly contagious and could kill people outside of the demographics of the elderly or the infirm, but that it could also devastate young people. And so Trump was aware of that. It doesn't get enough airplay because, I don't know, because of negligence on the part of the mainstream media, but also perhaps just the fact that it's a difficult truth to swallow, that Trump and his son-in-law Jared Kushner willfully and purposefully sabotaged the COVID response because they wanted it to go badly for Democratic governors, and so contaminate the public's perception of Democratic candidates in general, and so increase his chances of success at the federal election or going forward in any election. Ron's pointing out that Trump also sent the Republicans a cease and desist order for his image and name, which is cool news. It's cool to see the Republican Party fracturing under Trump. But at the same time, it's also devastating and sad to see how politically effective a white nationalist strategy has been in the United States. Am I sharing out to Twitch also? No, I'm not hooked up to Twitch yet with HAPS, but I can do that actually. HAPS has the capacity. Joni wants to know, this is a good question, Joni, where will you watch me after Periscope goes away? I'll type my response in the comment section. You can watch me on HAPS/TV, and my username is Dovecat on HAPS. So that's going to be the forum. I'll have to repeat this every day, so I'm going to get used to telling people briefly but repeatedly that this is the platform I'm going to be using, and shouldn't be too difficult to migrate to. If you type in HAPS and TV and search through users for Davcat, DAVKAT, you'll find me. You can hit follow or subscribe or whatever it is on HAPS, and you'll be able to see my shows on an ongoing basis. I'll put that up high just for a bit. I'll present on screen. There we go. All right. Oh, wow. And an investigation by New York Times from Trump found over 200 companies, special interest groups, and foreign governments that patronized his properties while reaping benefits from him. So that's in direct violation of the Emoluments Clause of the Constitution, which was set up to make sure that the US president, whoever he be or she be, but the Constitution writers presumably believed it would be a he, considering women weren't given the right to vote initially. And it took the 19th Amendment for women to be able to vote. But the Emoluments Clause specifies the president may only receive the salary of the presidency. They may not receive money from domestic sources for any reason or international sources for any reason, because they wanted the president's calculations, decision-making calculations, to be free of influence, from financial influence from other people at a domestic or international level. So hence, former President Jimmy Carter gave up his small peanut farm when he ascended to the presidency. Trump didn't give up his businesses, and as I just said, the New York Times found over 200 companies, special interest groups, and foreign governments that patronized his properties, i.e. put money in his pocket, in the pocket of his businesses and so consequently his pockets, whilst reaping benefits from him. So having an actual reciprocal relationship, I put money in your pocket and you offer me a tax break or taxpayer subsidies to benefit my organization or my lobby group, etc. Charlie Kirk, Ben Shapiro have been very racist and horrible to Meghan Markle and have accused her of lying about everything, lying that oh, wait, I remember what we're supposed to do with propaganda. We're supposed to foreground the truth first to make it like a truth sandwich. This is psychological and linguistic sense. So the truth is Meghan Markle suffered from suicide ideation, namely thinking suicidal thoughts while she was pregnant with her now son, Archie. She asked the firm of the royal family for support and if she could check herself into a hospital or if they could help her do that. And they said, no, it wouldn't be a good look for the royal family for you to check yourself into hospital to get mental health help. So no. So that was a woman pregnant who was suffering from severely depressive thoughts and who just thought it would be easier for that family if she just ceased to exist. And obviously that type of thinking is not ideal, and thoughts that tend to need some type of intervention, external intervention, in order to help that person overcome those irrationally self-critical thoughts that people would just be better off without me. If you yourself ever have such a thought, I urge you to call a hotline and to begin the process of talking it through with someone else or seeing someone who can help you see that that's not a reasonable thought process and that people actually will not be better off without you, and that it always impacts people negatively if someone takes their own life. So it's always better to try and remember that this too shall pass motto, and to find something to look forward to, or to find somebody who can point out that it's not a reasonable position to take, to think that everybody would be better off without you. It's just always not true. Always. Somebody called Dog Walker Guy gave me a high five award. Thank you, Dog Walker Guy. Frank gave me a compliment to say it's refreshing to hear someone who is digesting the stories they are reporting. Thank you. CosmicRose says, great day to remind everyone that we need the Equal Rights Amendment signed by all 50 states. Are there any holdouts? I thought it was actually already signed by all 50 states, but let's have a look. ERA remains to sign. Well, let's refer to Wikipedia. So it was first introduced to Congress in December 1923. Oh, 5 state legislatures in Idaho, Kentucky, Nebraska, Tennessee, and South Dakota have voted to revoke their ERA ratifications. That was in 1979. Getting the ERA adopted was revived in the 2010s. Virginia's General Assembly passed a ratification resolution for the ERA in 2020, claiming to bring the number of ratifications to 38. However, experts and advocates have acknowledged legal uncertainty about the consequences of the Virginian ratification due to expired deadlines and 5 states' revocations. So it looks like some states might need to reissue their support for the ERA. That's had a complicated life, but has been ratified in various places. All right. Thank you for trying, Eleanor, because I'll try and make an effort to share that picture next time from the New York Times. The two pictures, one taken at a Black Lives Matter protest and one a selfie taken by two police officers as they participated in the storming of the Capitol. Or the sacking of the Capitol is another way to put it. Sacking meaning the destruction of various Capitol building infrastructure, resources, windows. Yes. One final thing I might note is that there's an investigation of Trump businesses in Manhattan, and that district attorney investigation apparently now includes the Chicago skyscraper loan documents, the Seven Springs estate documents, that's sort of a family property that the Trumps had, Trump family accountant records, Deutsche Bank documents, insurance documents, and tax records. And Michael Cohen is cooperating, allegedly, and Weisselberg, the accountant for the Trump organization, is under pressure to cooperate. So that's all from me, other than a graph that maybe I can get Eleanor to help us show that graph if it's available. I'm going to put this link over here, guys. Oh, Eleanor's there. Hello, Eleanor. There we go. Dog Walker says, good day. Dog Walker Guy says, do you remember me? I'm in Bondi Beach. I don't recollect you, but Bondi is a beautiful place. Did I see the comment about Representative Swalwell? No, I have not seen that comment, but I'm aware Swalwell has initiated a lawsuit against Trump and Giuliani. Oh, look. Brett pointed out 8 minutes ago, and I didn't see it, that since this is International Women's Day, it's worth pointing out that there were many women like Sarah Calzado, a scholar of totalitarian regimes, who pointed out what Trump would do early and often and were systematically ignored by the mainstream press. Yes, Sarah Calzado had some appearances on Joy Reid's show, and her concerns about the Mueller investigation were certainly validated by the events of that investigation and what happened as a consequence. Yes. Oh, you can sort of see the Twitter comment in the section. There's a little graph showing that Trump added $7 trillion in debt to the United States and left America with the worst economy in a decade, and inspired the attack on the Capitol, and cleaning up the mess left by the fascists cost, I believe, in the realm of $30 million. Yes. So Glenn Kirshner feels the Swalwell suit is important. I'm sure it is. There's a few lawsuits to try and hold the Trumpists responsible for the attack on the Capitol, which is great. I mean, it would be nice too if there could be a lawsuit against Trump for his actions as president in purposefully abandoning Americans to a pandemic in order for politically expedient reasons, to try and have high death tolls that could be then attributed to Democratic governors, and he would just bank on people not remembering that they pay federal taxes and therefore should expect a functional federal government, one that uses its powers as government, as the executive branch, to use things like the Defense Production Act to scale up production of personal protective equipment, to scale up production of masks and vaccine components and gowns and all of the things you need during a pandemic. And Trump could have initiated that. Biden was calling for it on the 26th of January in 2020. But his opinion piece was obviously not adopted or embraced by the Trump administration. They were hoping a lot of people would die and blame Democrats, and that their families would blame Democrats for that. All right, everybody. Well, I'm going to go. Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to point out as a piece of good news that COVID relief checks could reach millions of people by the end of the month. Having been passed by the Senate, it'll go to Biden for a signature, and hopefully those checks will be going out soon. It's going to cut child poverty in half, because that's $3,000 being sent per child to families with children, on top of their $1,400 relief checks. So that's going to revolutionize America to a large degree, because poverty is a really important thing to relieve when you have people who are able to stay in their homes. And there's also like a large budget for rental assistance as well. So when you save that part of the economy, it will really help kickstart an economic recovery in the US, as will the efficiency of the Biden administration's vaccination rollout programs. So people can see that there's a big difference now, that people who care are in charge and are using their organizational talents to expedite and make more efficient the rollout schedule. So that's all from me for today. I've talked a lot. Yes, Brian, very glad you were able to catch me too. So lovely to see you again. And Cyber Grief says, thank you for your time. Thank you. Kimchi says, thanks. Lovely to, Eleanor did it. And two things. Well done. So let's get rid of the Twitter one, just so we can see them. So we'll get rid of the graph. That below the line red graph was Trump's execrable jobs performance, which we know. But on my, there we go. Look at that. So you can just get the idea that there's officers holding up signs. I'll see myself what the picture says. The picture on the left says silence equals violence, and that's Officer Thomas Robertson in the center. So he's holding the silence equals violence poster, and near to him is a woman holding a sign saying no justice, no peace. That's I think the woman who organized the protest march. Yes, that's Bridget Craighead. And she then denounced the officers once she realized that that same officer, Sergeant Robertson, was in a picture taken in the Capitol. Actually, I don't know who that statue is of behind them in the Capitol, but they've invaded the Capitol building. They've been part of an insurrection effort, 2 police officers, and all of her joy in thinking, yes, America is moving forwards. Black Lives Matter organizers are holding signs next to police officers. We're changing the culture, and this is a way forward. And then she realized that those people participated in a white insurgency, a white nationalistic insurgency. Thank you, Joni, for your feedback. And thank you also very much, Brett, who also gave me a Supporting Women Award. Much obliged. And Eleanor, I'm so grateful to you for your help in bringing up that photo. It's just lovely to know that I have that ability to do that, share photos, and I'm going to work on figuring out how to do that myself as well, so I don't have to trouble you next time. But so grateful to have you here in this moment. Thank you, darling. And I don't know if Helen's still here, but she's offered to help me look through the laptop version of HAPS as well. Oh, I didn't touch on Madonna Hall Complex, but you know what? I'll get to that next time. For now, I'm going to say au revoir. Thank you to everybody. Brett, Frank, Kimchi, Eleanor, Cyber Grief, Brian, Craig, Cosmic Rose. Anybody else? Joni, Dog Walker. And I think that's everybody. I think that's everyone. All right, everybody. Take care. All the best. Thanks again. Bye.